Hey everybody, this is Bob Baulch. Thanks for tuning in to my That's Jesus channel. In today's video, we see how Jesus is found in the first chapter of Genesis. It was good. Creation. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Hey everybody, this is Bob Baulch. Thanks for tuning into my That's Jesus channel. In today's video, we're going to be looking at Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 through 31, through the end of the chapter. We're going to be looking at the word good. So if you haven't read Genesis chapter 1 yet, go on ahead and pause this video, read Genesis chapter 1, get a highlighter, get a pen, get a pencil, and note every single time that you find the word good, and then come right back. Thanks a lot. Well, thanks for coming back. We're going to be looking at Genesis chapter 1. Now, when we look at Genesis chapter 1, a couple of things that you need to be aware of. The word good. Now, I'm not saying that these instances of the word good are prophetic in nature or that they're allegorical in nature. I just find them interesting. The reason I find them interesting is that whenever Moses uses the word good, these are inspired words from the Holy Spirit that Moses wrote, that they are things that are required for life. So you'll see what I mean here in just a second. First, verse 4, God saw that the light was good. We can't get along on earth without light. There's another thing about light that God says twice in Genesis chapter 1. He says that God separated the light from the darkness. He says that in verse 4, and then he says it way down here also in verse, right here, verse 18. And after he's placed the sun and the moon in the expanse of the sky, he says to separate the light from the darkness. So that's interesting. Verse 4, the light is good. The next thing we look at is verse 6 through 10. This is where God separates the waters. He separates the waters above and below this expanse, whatever this expanse is. Some versions it calls it a firmament. Some versions it calls it the heavens. We're just going to call it the atmosphere. These waters being separated into one place and having dry land appear is good. You can't have life on earth unless you have water. So we got light and we've got water. Both of those things are required to have life on earth. The next thing, let's keep on going. We've got this vegetation that reproduces itself. It is fruitful. This fruitfulness is required if you're going to have life on earth. If things don't multiply, if they're not being fruitful, you cannot have life on earth. So again, God says that it was good. This vegetation that's fruitful, he says that's good. Then the next thing, we keep on going, and we're in verse 18. We just talked about that a second ago, where God creates these two lights, one to rule the day, one to rule the night, and he says that they are to separate the light from the darkness, and God calls it good. So we've got light, we've got water, we've got being fruitful, we've got light again, and all of those are good. Next thing we have on days, the fifth and the sixth days have to do with animals, right? So the fifth day, let the waters teem with swarms of living creatures, and let the birds fly above the earth. So this is interesting. We have things in the water, and we have things in the air, and God says what? Verse 21, God saw that it was good. And he says, be fruitful and multiply. So he tells those things. You need to multiply, you need to be fruitful. Again, that's things that are needed for there to be life on earth. Okay, next, we've got the sixth day, the last day of creation before God rested. God says, let the earth bring forth living creatures. What kind of creatures? Living creatures after their kind, and cattle, creeping things, and beasts of the earth after their kind. So they're supposed to reproduce as well. And God says what? That it was good. Verse 25. Verse 26, he creates mankind. And this is interesting. God says, let us make man in our image. Now, he uses the plural there. We're not going to get into that. You can go to lots of other studies and find out why God says, let us, and why God says, in our image. We're not going to cover that. That's really simple. But what he does is he says, in our image. And they're going to have authority. They're going to have authority also. So God made man in his image. He says, be fruitful and multiply. There's that fruitful thing that's good. And he says, I've given you every plant yielding seed and every tree. Right? So we have authority over the earth. We are going to, in verse 28, subdue it. So that's interesting. So God has a hierarchy. God's on top, then man, and then the earth. And God looks at everything that he's created and says what? Right here in verse 31, it was very good. Very good. So what does that mean? What does that mean for us? Well, I think the thing that is interesting is that God has all of these things and he calls them good. And yet, really, is he calling just those things good? He is. He is. But I noticed a couple of years ago when I read Genesis chapter 1 that all of these things that God called good, somebody personified all of those things as well. When God said, let there be light, and the light was good, someone is the light of the world. God said, let's get the waters, let's separate them. Someone is the living water. God said, hey, be fruitful and multiply. There's somebody who's the true vine that has fruitful branches. We have all these living creatures. We have living creatures below the water. We have living creatures in the air. We have living creatures on the earth. And yet we have one who is a life-giving man. And then we have the image of God. We have one that came to earth. It was not only the image of God, he was God. All these things point to one person. And that one person has a name. And that name, that's Jesus. That's Jesus. So I hope you enjoyed today's short little study. Is it prophetic? Again, no, it's not prophetic. Is it allegorical? No, probably not. When we read Genesis 1, are we supposed to notice these things and say, that points right to Jesus? Probably not. It's just an observation that I wanted to share with you that I think is interesting. And I hope you found it interesting. If you did, give this video a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. But either way, I would appreciate it if you made a comment in the comment section explaining why you gave it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and go on ahead and hit that notification bell so the next time I come out with a video, you'll be able to see it. Thanks so much. I hope you have a great day. Be blessed.